Elon Musk has said many times now that he thinks Ark Invest forecast for Tesla's Robotaxi future is the most accurate. Well, now that the We Robot event is done and Tesla has shown off their Cybercab, we'll watch several videos of Tasha Keeney sharing what she saw and how her forecasts have changed. Tasha says that Tesla's Robotaxi is not the same market at all, and it's a much larger opportunity as human ride-hail services like Uber. She also predicts that Tesla's Robotaxi network will launch sooner than expected and will be the first to scale as they head toward a market of over $10 trillion globally. She believes that Tesla's edge will be the relatively lower price Robotaxi rides at only 30 cents per mile, which would be just 1/10 of current pricing. The world is about to change. I got Larry Goldberg joining us. He's back out there traveling so far, and no matter where the starships are, that's where he's going to be. Thank you so much, Larry.
Thanks, Herbert. Just one word on the Starship. It is one of the most incredible days of my life, and I've had a very active and very full life. But seeing that thing come on down, I mean, it was like watching a miracle before your eyes. Anyway, enough about that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the moment that we kind of have higher confidence that humans can become multi-planetary. We can really just expand our horizons. So, in fact, that's interesting because that is exactly what Tasha Keeney and Sam Corris did a show, the Ark Invest, and they talked about Elon's historic week, the Cybercab, and the Starship. We're going to listen to some of her videos, and we're going to have you react to what she took, because obviously now that they shared a lot of information about the Cybercab, information about the pilot and the rollout of the Robotaxi, we'll see where she stands on all this.
I do have a couple points to make around like kind of some things I think that just weren't picked up well in general that you didn't have to miss with the recording, but I feel like were overlooked. But first, I mean, I think being there that, you really got a sense of excitement from the FSD team, from engineers, from the designers working at Tesla surrounding this event. I think, one, they're all people that like clearly believe in the mission and seem genuinely excited to see what our reactions would be. And also we're like really thoughtful in terms of just looking for feedback for people, from people at the event. I mean, the major thing is that Kathy and I rode in the Cybercab around the Warner Brothers studio lot. And so, first, like I'll point it out, for full autonomy, it's a lot more difficult to make something work on public roads than it is in a closed circuit setting. That said, I mean, this is a new vehicle. There's no steering wheel, no pedals, and it works, right? So I think that that's an achievement that I feel like wasn't necessarily maybe as recognized as it should be. I mean, the fact that they can do this in a closed circuit setting, it's like, okay, it's like another step to go on public roads, but it's like basically a prototype vehicle that they were able to accomplish this with. And I think that's meaningful.
Yeah. Tesla engineers did already confirm that it was version 13. Right. Ashok Laswamy said that it was close to version 13, and it's actually, he said, even close to production, but I don't think that means anything, but just ready to share with the world, us, to drive it. Thoughts on what she said?
Yeah, I've spoken with Tasha since she was back, and she echoed a lot of these thoughts, and we had quite an interesting conversation about it. One of the things that occurred to me is, Ashok did give us the roadmap, or at least the Tesla AI team gave us the roadmap of what to expect in the month of September or prior to October 10/10, and they gave us a very clear roadmap, and they hit every single metric on that roadmap, every single milestone on that roadmap. And they've kind of given us another roadmap, for October. In that tweet, they told us what was coming in October. So I think we can expect to see this version 13 start rolling out in dribs and drabs. Hopefully they'll get to Cybertruck first. So I think we are on and they're talking with such confidence. So I think that this event was called because they see this thing rolling out they see the final mile. and that's the sense I got from Tasha. I think she is fairly, in her mind, she sees this final mile coming. So I think, events are conspiring. We're getting to this end game, or this final mile, and I think it's coming soon.
Yeah. So the event itself, 20, I think it was 19 Cybercabs, and the rest, there was 50 of them, so 30 something were Model Ys. I rode in 2 of the vehicles, 1 Model Y, 1 Cybercab, and they were just glorious rides, just glorious, easy, simple, never once afraid. And so it was quite wonderful. So I thought it was very effective.
One point I will make that is very important. The rides were at relatively low speed, but Tasha makes the point that the speed that they were at is roughly the average speed at which Waymo is driven.
Yeah.
So when people quote at me, oh, Waymo have got, 10,000 miles between interventions and Tesla has 55 miles. Yes, but Tesla's 55 miles is in the wild. Waymo's interventions, firstly, we don't know the definition of their intervention, but we understand that it may not be every intervention. Remote intervention may not be counted. Secondly, their interventions are at a dramatically lower speed and in a controlled environment. What do I mean by controlled environment? In a pre-mapped, predefined space. So you cannot compare the two. I'm riding the latest version 5.5 for the Cybertruck, and I've done 3,000 miles in the last 7 days. The only interventions I'm having, I've had 3 safety interventions so far. The other interventions are just voluntary, and that's the other point I'll make. The interventions that are being measured by the public right now, sort of open source intervention mining, is all forms of intervention. Many of them voluntary for things that have nothing to do with FSD. So I don't think you can compare these at all. My own belief is we're getting to the point that interventions are probably reaching the point that they could actually run, certainly in a relatively limited area of, say, high traffic, such as San Francisco and or New York City. They could run, or Austin, they could run the FSD pretty much with this version.
All right. We're going to talk a lot more about Waymo when we listen to Tasha. And we're going to have 3 clips more to go, and we're going to get that in a second clip here. So let's watch this one.
So first I'll point out, so it was 20 Cybercabs, and then the rest was actually, I don't know if it was Model X and Model Y. I only saw Model Y vehicles there, but so these are existing Tesla cars. So you don't we didn't sit in the front seat of the car. We sat in the passenger seat and behind. That did, within this closed circuit lot, drive fully autonomously. So it proves that they can do this on the rest of their vehicle lineup as well, which I actually think is really meaningful. What people missed, which you could have caught during the live presentation, was, previously Tesla in their in the autopilot day, which is now a number of years ago, they had talked about price per mile, and I believe they said something around like $1.50. I forget exactly what the benchmark was, but the price that they gave this most current, at this recent event was a lot lower than what they've said in the past. Okay, so Elon said that at scale, it could cost Tesla about 20 cents per mile to offer Robotaxi service, and then with taxes and other fees, to the consumer, it would be more like 30 to 40 cents per mile. Again, I think that's at scale. They do not have to charge that price at first, because you simply just have to undercut Uber. But why is it so disruptive? Okay, well, Uber in Western markets is around $2 per mile. Driving your personal car in the US on average is about 70 cents per mile. And actually our associate Akash just refreshed this work. So great job, Akash. And so when you lower the price per mile, both below ride hail and of driving a personal car, you expand the ride hail market far past what we see it as today for human-driven ride hail. So Uber and Didi, this is like hundreds of billions in terms of market value. A robotaxi could make this like 10 trillion plus in market value if you look at the global market for miles traveled, because at that point, you convince people to forego personal car purchases. And in urban markets, this is what we think will be the dominant form of transportation, say, in the next decade. So this is something we've been talking about for years, but it's just coming to fruition now. And the exciting part is that it's still in really early days. So Waymo has proved that it's possible. But ultimately, we think that Tesla is the company that is better set up to really scale this type of effort.
Yeah. So this is huge news, right? This is what she said, right? Elon said that Tesla could charge 40 cents per mile at scale for robotaxi service. Here's why that matters. A lower price per mile, the market for ride hail expands far past what Uber and Didi can do, which is like hundreds of billions of dollars. We can now get to the $10 trillion market. She shared this slide. Ride hail is likely to create an $11 trillion addressable market at 25% per mile. Autonomous transportation could serve a wider population than the human driver said today. Absolutely. I'm always careful before I choose Uber. It's going to cost me $70 to get to the airport. But boy, if it's just 25 cents a mile, I'll take it to go to the, to the mall locally. So you can see here the millions, the miles in trillions. What could happen of that and the price per mile? What's your thoughts here? Here's the price points, right? So if you can get to the 25 cents, you're going to expand the price point. If it's 50 cents, it expands it. If it's $1, expands it. If it's $2, green, you're basically just at the same point that Uber and taxis can do.
Right. So Tasha's underestimating the market, in my judgment.
What?
And I'll tell you why. Now, I've had this conversation with her, and I think as a result, she even said in the video, not a 10 trillion, but greater than 10 trillion. And the reason I say that is because, I was brought up in the third world, and I've traveled the third world a great deal. This 10 trillion or 11 trillion addressable market is thinking about the market for vehicles right now throughout the world. But, there's a very large portion of the third world where the bulk of the population cannot afford a vehicle. And so they'll ride, three-wheelers, or they'll use a three-wheeler cab service. But once you're getting down to that 30 cent or 20 cent mark, you're actually competing with those three-wheelers, and you're practically competing with bicycles at that point. Not that bicycles cost that little, but at that little price, you're going to get a very large proportion of the market, of the population of the world that is currently not mobile, becoming mobile. So talk about transformation. That's going to be a larger transformation than almost anything that's ever happened in the world. Because suddenly, the 8 billion people, the market's no longer the top 2 or 3 or 4 billion people in the world who can afford some form of mobility. It's the other 4 billion people who now suddenly are going to be able to afford mobility, and the productivity that's going to rise as a result of that is staggering. So I think that's an equation that hasn't been calculated yet.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree with you. This is going to transform cities. It's going to transform work, living, every place.
And it's going to transform the rural areas.
Interesting. Got to give that some thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's listen to the third clip of her. It's fantastic what she's pulling out here so far.
Waymo was first to launch, so let's give them credit for that. And the service works. So right now, if you're in San Francisco, LA, in Phoenix, I know they're launching in Austin. I believe they've announced a couple of other cities for testing. You can get in a car today. Some of these are like gated access, so not all of them are available to anyone when you immediately sign up. But so I've ridden in a Waymo car in 2 cities now. And the service works, right? It does take slightly longer than an Uber to get, but it's a smooth ride. And after you get in, and after like the initial amazement of wow, there's no one in the driver's seat, you kind of quickly forget about it, and you can see how any other passenger would just like be looking at their phone the whole time. Of course, I'm like so excited about it that I'm constantly looking out the front and the side windows, but it works. So the way that Waymo has done this is they have chosen a much more complicated sensor suite than Tesla. So the knock against Tesla that everyone likes to make is, okay, they're just using cameras. It's a vision-only system. That's impossible to solve full autonomy. We don't believe that that's true. It's a much harder problem to solve. So Waymo is using LiDAR, radar, and a whole suite of sensors plus cameras. And then, the car is basically having to do the job of deciding, okay, which sensor am I going to trust at this moment? And LiDAR is a system of lasers that gives you a 3D point cloud of what the world looks like. So potentially, this is more accurate than cameras, potentially, because you have to infer with a camera, how far away something is, whereas a LiDAR is a direct measurement of it. But the reality is that, a Waymo car ran into a telephone pole, right? So clearly, like, this system isn't perfect. But if you wanted to launch first, this is probably the way to do it, to use this more complicated sensor set. But in order to scale, Waymo is using, so often with LiDAR, you use high definition maps. You map the area that you want to launch in, and then you have this version of base truth that the car can then check back to in terms of, okay, what's new that wasn't here before that might give me a little bit of information to tell me about what type of obstacle or non-obstacle that I'm looking at here. So that's one additional step. Tesla does not use HD maps. But also, on top of that, like sensor suite technology, Tesla just is a manufacturing company. Waymo has to partner with companies like Hyundai and Zeekr, and has to convince them to produce these vehicles and buy these vehicles. Whereas Tesla, they're just coming off the lot for Tesla, right? And that Tesla also already has an existing database that's much larger than Waymo. So the last reported number that we have for Waymo's fleet is 700 vehicles. Could be bigger now, but it was 700. Tesla has millions of cars on the road. So we estimate that they're collecting about 5 million miles a day just in FSD, compared to about 70,000 on Waymo's fleet. That's our estimate. So that just gives you an example of like the scale and the pace at which they're collecting this data, which really matters for corner cases and for like getting those last steps to full autonomy right.
So she explained it really well, right? To go to first to market, go ahead and do the LiDAR, but it's not the one that's going to go to scale. Yeah. You got a lot to say about Waymo, right?
Well, I was talking about the interventions in Waymo, and just because that's been the subject of some debate on X. Yeah, in the long term, I think that the sensor suite of these cars are going to have to be pared down. Not they're going to have to be pared down, but they're really redundant. I am convinced now from where I am in terms of driving in the real world with the sensor suite of 8 cameras, that the camera's just fine. It's just fine. I think that the cost, but also the amount of support and effort, remapping and maintaining the maps, it's just a little crazy. The whole business model of this massive sensor suite and this massive amount of compute, I don't think is going to be sustainable. That's my view.
I think it's done. I think it's over. Like if you notice, Waymo partnered with Hyundai. But what is the partnership? It's Waymo buying Hyundai cars. It's not Hyundai going, hey, let me go ahead and put your Waymo software and tool and let's get going. It's the opposite. Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of Chinese companies that are, each doing their own thing. There's some of them are partnering with Baidu, and their sensor suites, in theory, and their car manufacturing costs are dramatically lower than the US costs. So, the real question is what's happening in China. And my sense is that what's happening in China is everybody's wanting to copy Tesla.
They're trying to copy Tesla. They're trying to move over. Yep.
Yep.
On both the neural network as well as the sensor suite.
Correct.
Okay, let's listen to the
and the robot.
Let's listen to the last.
We knew that this was going to be a product unveil, and that's like a really important distinction. They don't unveil new products at the events that tend to have like a ton of slides and data and information, and they tend to separate those. So we knew that this was a product unveil. Like I'll give it to some of the people that I think wanted more info. A Robotaxi, just like in itself, is a little bit more complicated than the typical product. In that, there's like a whole software system that has to be behind it, right? It's not just the car itself, but I think that for a product launch, I don't feel like this was actually, more sparse on information than any of the previous ones. They did have a couple key slides, like they talked about the price of the car. We found out that they're planning to offer this to consumers, which is why they would want to build hype around the vehicle. And in fact, I think that could incentivize these third parties to form that then own the fleets of Teslas, because we think long term, not all the vehicles in the Robotaxi fleet will be on Tesla's balance sheet. They will be owned and maintained by third parties. So they're getting that going and probably want to get people excited about starting that kind of business. Would I have wanted additional information? I always want more data, right? But I guess I wasn't as disappointed as like the street reaction would suggest. And furthermore, I'll say that we also saw Uber stock move pretty significantly on this event. And I think that's absolutely ridiculous when you look again at the market opportunity that we talked about in terms of human ride hail versus robotaxis. I mean, it's like, yes, they overlap, but it's not the same market at all. It's such a larger opportunity that I don't think that Uber will be as competitive as like a wholly owned player like Tesla will be anytime soon.
Yeah, thoughts on what you just said there?
I think Uber will be one of the biggest buyers of Teslas in the new world. I mean, they're going to have to operate the Tesla fleet. They're going to have to. But yeah, I mean, look, it was an unveil of a product. I think they did a really good job of it. I think, as usual, if they do an unveil, then there's an argument that there's insufficient product information or insufficient financial detail. If they do a financial call, then there's they don't talk about product enough. Yeah, it's the usual noise to expect. It's as we expected would happened. And, I think it's normal, but the product is very interesting. The big question is whether this product is also the platform for the new, Model 2 or whatever the new model is going to be called. That's an interesting question. One of the really good answers we heard, one of the strong answers we heard, is that the Hardware 3 is going to be more than sufficient, and they have written compilation time code to take care of the differences between the two processes. So there's only one compile for them both. These are very important pieces of information that we gained from the discussions after this presentation. So yeah, I found it was a very interesting and very informative and very valuable event. And clearly, those people who understand what's going on really did appreciate it, the event.
The engineers have confirmed that Hardware 3 can absolutely, actually it's Lars Morvey and Franz, they both confirmed that Hardware 3 can do full autonomy. And then we learned from Bloomberg, again, just, it's rumors, but they seem to have called it correct, where they said that they were told that at the event, Elon was supposed to talk about the software. He was supposed to talk about FSD and semi, and was even supposed to talk about pricing. But because there was 2 medical emergencies, they had to cut some parts of it. So I don't know how true that is, but that's, again, I think we're going to hear it next week, October 23rd. right? Do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to, yeah, we must be a little cautious about that. He's not going to talk about product, but, I mean, he's very, 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 very averse to talking product in a earnings call. I don't think he will get into detail in the earnings call, except he may make the exception. And I just hope that the people, anyway, we're going to learn these things in due course. I think we're very hungry for the information. The press is having a field day trying to, talk it down. But, that's beta for me.
Yeah. So there's two more information that Tasha Keeney did say. One was she actually predicts that this Tesla Robotaxi network could launch sooner than expected. She thinks it will launch by 2025 or 2026. And it doesn't necessarily need the Cybercab. Like you can probably have human drivers. So in their article that they published a long time ago, right, they were saying this already. Now, Tesla did not come out and say that there's going to be supervised, robotaxi that was launching. They just said it's going to be unsupervised in 2 states next year. But these guys are still saying, hey, we can get there. And then the other thing she said is that she expects the network to scale before competitors. And this is what I think we were just listening to her say right now, that it's a 10 trillion globally. If you get to 30 to 40%, it completely expands everything. Lower costs, makes it extremely competitive against existing human drivers, and it will actually expand it. So that's
I expect that there will pop up some boutique ride-hail services using FSD and drivers as these independent networks prep to become part of Tesla.
Yeah. I mean, I've been saying to folks that, I just really didn't expect that they were going to do a nationwide, supervised, human-driven, Uber-like competitor. It doesn't make sense to me. But what's going to happen at these pilots of these, or pilots, when they launch it at these 2 states, it won't be pilots, is that, as always, every car company had to do this. Every autonomous company had to do this, both Waymo, Cruise, and the Chinese. You start off with a human behind the wheel, then prove it, and then move to teleoperators, and then move to less and less of that if you don't need it. So
right.
I think that's what's going to happen, but slowly. Thank you so much, Larry. Appreciate the conversation. Glad that you're able to give your feedback on Tasha Keeney. I know you had an interview with her very recently as well, so I wanted to hear your point of view because you heard a lot directly from them as well. Thanks, Larry. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.